There were 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round of the 2021 NFL Draft, but only 2 of them are already dealing with learning a new offense, one of which is Justin Fields. Fields was a star at Ohio State, and his mobility and strong arm are something to make any scout excited. But his rookie season didn't go as well as planned. Now, 2022 could be a make-or-break year for Fields. Fields started his rookie year as the Bears' backup to Andy Dalton, but actually got in during the season opener and scored a rushing touchdown. Then, Dalton suffered a knee injury in week 2, and just like that, Fields took over. His first NFL start probably could have gone better, a lot better. Fields got sacked 9 times, 4.5 were by Myles Garrett. The next week, Fields won his first career game, downing the Lions, and was promptly named the starter for the rest of the season. Easily his worst game of the season was in Week 7 against the Buccaneers. Chicago lost 38-3, and Fields, well, sucked. He turned the ball over 5 times, 3 interceptions, and 2 fumbles. In Week 11, Fields suffered multiple cracked ribs and had to miss a couple of games. Then, he suffered an ankle injury that took him out for 2 games, and then, ahead of the Bears' season finale, he tested positive for COVID. Yeah, that probably could have ended better. With a lot of rookie quarterbacks, you see them progress and improve towards the end of the season, but Fields wasn't even on the field. He ended up 5th in rushing yards for quarterbacks with 420. Nice. He passed for just under 1,900 yards, had only 7 passing touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. Not great. If you're looking for the biggest reason why Justin Fields can break out in 2022, it's simple. Matt Nagy is gone. Yeah, I guess he had his moments, but the supposedly offensive mastermind looked way over his head as a head coach in Chicago. Now he's gone, and hopefully the Bears can put together at least a competent offense for Fields. Obviously, the biggest priority for Chicago is to develop Fields, at least it should be. You'd expect the Bears to go out and go after an offensive mind, but instead they hired Matt Eberflus. Eberflus is a defensive guy. He played at Toledo. While he was there, he did have some coach, what was his name? Nick Saban. Eberflus played and then ended up coaching at Toledo and finally got an NFL job with the Browns in 2009. He was the defensive coordinator for the Colts before he got the Chicago job. Matt Eberflus may be the new head coach in Chicago, but he isn't the most important coach on the staff, at least for Fields' development. It's Luke Getsy. Getsy was an unsuccessful undrafted free agent QB back in 2007 and ended up getting into coaching. He bounced around colleges before he got his first NFL job in 2014 as an offensive quality control coach for the Packers that was under Mike McCarthy, and then after he became the offensive coordinator at Mississippi State, he returned back to Green Bay as the quarterbacks coach and later the passing game coordinator for Matt LaFleur. Based on where he's from, especially being under LaFleur, I'm assuming that you can expect Getsy's offensive scheme to look something like those under that Mike Shanahan coaching tree, like Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, and now Mike McDaniel and Kevin O'Connell. Plus, Eberflus plans on trying to build the offense around Fields' strengths, which at times it felt like Nagy did the opposite. I can count on one hand the number of times Nagy had Fields actually roll out of the pocket or run a bootleg. I think we're finally going to get our chance to see Fields air it out with that beautiful deep ball, and he can actually use his athleticism to run. Those two things can really stretch the field for an offense. Eberflus knows that, and it sounds like that's the direction the offense is headed. The question is whether or not the Bears have the talent to make it work. I have my worries, or at least my questions, when it comes to Fields' weapons. The Bears claimed that wide receiver was the biggest priority this offseason, and I'm sure they did their due diligence, but they didn't get shit. The number one is going to be Darnell Mooney, who I like a lot. I think he's a fantastic player, and it's shocking that he didn't go until the 5th round in 2020, but I do wonder what he's going to look like as a number 1. He was better than Allen Robinson last year statistically, but obviously a guy like Robinson demands a lot of attention, but he's gone now. Mooney did have over 1,000 yards in 2021, and I'm excited to see what his future looks like, but my worries are more with the rest of the receiving core. The Bears' number 2 is Byron Pringle, who signed this offseason after 4 years with the Chiefs, and he still really needs to prove himself. Pringle didn't even have 200 yards in a season until last year when he did break out with over 500 yards. He's got some promise, but he's got a lot to prove still. There's a good amount of other wideouts on the roster, but there's nothing that really sticks out. Maybe rookie Velus Jones, who, by the way, is 2 years older than Fields and again is a rookie. Maybe he could have some kind of role in the offense. I actually have a lot more faith in the Bears' tight ends. Cole Kmet, I thought, had a nice season last year. Chicago also signed Ryan Griffin this offseason, who he had some good seasons in Houston and was pretty solid with the Jets for the last 3 years. Unfortunately, what I think is the most important part of the offense for a young QB is the offensive line. And, Chicago's sucks. I think tackle Tevin Jenkins has a chance to have a good year after he really did struggle as a rookie after the Bears took him in the second round. But outside of him, I don't see a lot of bright spots on that line. I think it'll be really difficult for Fields to have significant success in 2022, but as we've seen, like with the Bengals last year, if you can have the right offense and the right weapons, it doesn't necessarily matter. And it probably falls on Luke Getsy to figure that out. I do wonder what direction Chicago is trying to head in. The Bears did trade away stud Khalil Mack to the Chargers for a second and a sixth this offseason. Luckily, Los Angeles took the entire rest of his contract, but trust me, the Bears are still in salary cap hell. Somehow, Chicago has $52.85 million in dead cap. It's the second most in the league behind the Falcons. When new general manager Ryan Poles got to Chicago, I think he knew the roster needed to be torn to shreds, and that's exactly what he's doing. The cap numbers are really not ideal, and it's going to hurt the Bears a lot in 2022, but that comes with a huge caveat. Chicago will have $112 million in space in 2023. That gives them plenty of room to be able to spend a lot of money on top free agents to finally build around Justin Fields and allow Matt Eberflus to get the guys that he wants in the building. But first, the Bears are going to need Fields to show some promise. I think it goes without saying that the most important thing for the Bears in 2022 is developing Justin Fields. Chicago moved up from 20 a year ago all the way to 11 to get Fields. Had to give up 2 first-round picks, a 4th and a 5th, all for Fields. This very well may be a make-or-break year for Justin Fields. I have to imagine that the new regime of Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy were hired with the expectation of being able to develop him, but there are still so many questions in Chicago. The offensive weapons aren't good, the offensive line is trash, and there just aren't many bright spots in general. But if the Bears can do what Matt Nagy refused to do and actually design an offense fit to Justin Fields, I think it's possible we see a brand new and, dare I say, good Justin Fields in 2022. At the end of the day, whether or not the Bears are successful this season isn't going to come down to how many wins they end up with. Chicago is in a rebuild right now. All it needs is for Matt Eberflus to start building his team and for Justin Fields to begin to show flashes that he can be the Bears' next franchise quarterback.